All right, so today we're going to be talking about the distance formula. So let's talk about distance. So let's talk about it right now with a word problem. Sarah and Morgan are running a marathon. Sarah is at mile marker 9 and Morgan is at mile marker 14. How do we find the distance between the two? So if I draw this on a number line, it's very easy to see. I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 between Sarah and Morgan. So how could I write that as a math problem? Well, I know that Morgan's at 14, and if I subtract 9 from 14, I'm going to get 5. So I know that the distance, I'm subtracting, and I'm able to find the distance between Morgan and Sarah. But now, what is distance? Well, distance I know is always a non-negative real number. In other words, I'm finding the absolute value of whatever I find, because if I have here on a number line, I have a church, a house, and a school. The distance between the house and the school is 4 units. Well, the distance between the church and the school is also 4 units, even though the church is at -4. So let's look at this problem. We have 3 points, and they make a triangle. And the 3 points, A is 1, 3, B is 5, 6, and C is 1, 6. So it's really easy for me to get from A to C, because that's 3 units up. And from B to C, it's 4 units to the left. But what about from A to B? That's not as easy. Well, I know that I can use, because this is a right triangle, I can use the Pythagorean theorem. I don't want to just add AC plus B plus BC, because that wouldn't make any sense. Because I can see that AB would be like taking a shortcut and going from AC and then to BC, that would take a lot longer to get there. So let's use that Pythagorean theorem. Remember, it is A squared plus B squared equals C squared. All right, so now if I have 3 squared plus 4 squared, that's going to equal C squared. Well, 3 squared is 9, plus 4 squared is 16, is equal to C squared. 25 is equal to C squared. When I take the square root of each side, I get 5. Okay, so there's an easier way. It's called the distance formula. The distance formula is equal to the square root of x sub 2 minus x sub 1 quantity squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 quantity squared. Let's look at why this works. So I've had a drawing here, made a drawing, and I've used generic x's and y's. I have x sub 1 and y sub 1, and I have x sub 2 and y sub 2. And then, if you notice, I have the horizontal distance and the vertical distance, and they meet at the point x sub 2, y sub 1. So the horizontal leg is from x sub 1 to x sub 2. And the vertical leg is from y sub 1 to y sub 2. So I can find the distance of the horizontal leg by subtracting x sub 2 minus x sub 1, and the vertical leg by subtracting y sub 2 minus y sub 1. So really, it's just like using the Pythagorean theorem. If I replaced a squared with the horizontal distance of x sub 2 minus x sub 1 quantity squared, and I replace b squared with the horizontal distance of y sub 2 minus y sub 1 quantity squared, and the c squared with d squared, well, I think that I could come up with the distance formula, because first of all, to get rid of the squares, I would have to square root both sides. And when I square root both sides, well, I really can't do anything with the left hand side, but I can with the right hand side, because when I square root d squared, it's going to equal d. Hence, the distance formula is really the Pythagorean theorem. All right. So now I have 2 points, and I have D, which is 3, 4, and E, which is -2, -5. Now, I could go ahead and make the right triangle and find the distance that way and using the Pythagorean theorem. Or I wouldn't have even had to have graphed them. I could have just plugged them into the distance formula. I suggest you write the distance formula down at the top of your page every time you are doing something with distance formula. Now notice here I'm replacing x sub 2 with -2, x sub 1 with +3, y sub 2 with -5, and y sub 1 with +4. I've also color coded it so you can see which things go together. Now, the first thing I have to do is combine -2 minus 3, and I get -5. I combine -5 minus 4, and I get +9. So now I'm getting -25 squared, or excuse me, -5 squared is 25, and -9 squared is 81. 25 plus 81, and when I get that, I get 106. Well, I'm taking the square root of 106. Well, remember, distance does not have to be a pretty number. It does not have to be a whole number. It's a real number. It's non-negative, so the answer is the square root of 106.